talked about a coach taking his team back to the very basics. And sometimes there's a lot of benefit in that for us. Because sometimes life can get so complex that you forget about why you're doing what you're doing. Why are you getting up in the morning? What's the real purpose of it? Why are you going to work in the first place? What's the purpose of it? Well, why are we here? Why are we here this morning? The reason that we're here is the same reason that the Apostle Paul gave Felix when he stood trial before him. We are here because of the hope of the resurrection. That's why we're here. We have the hope of eternal life. But here's the thing. We got to go back to something very basic here. If we are to be resurrected, we must first experience death. This sounds very basic, but hear this. Only the dead can be resurrected. Right? I mean, you can't resurrect an alive person. That makes no sense. You have to first die. Well, here's the problem with that. I'm all about life. I'm all about experiencing life, and that's why I'm pursuing the Lord. But what the Lord has shown me is that I must first willingly choose death. And the problem with that is that I find I have an aversion to death. But I want the life. You know, as I was thinking about this, I was remembering as a young man in high school that I had this desire to pursue rodeo. And there at the county fair in Effingham County, there was always a rodeo. And I decided I was going to enter into the rodeo. And I was going to enter into the bareback riding. And so I went through the training and all that because just watching those cowboys, I mean, that just looked like life to me. I mean, to be on the back of a wild horse, I mean, what could make you feel more alive? But I'll never forget when the rodeo came and it was my first time and I began to slide down over that wild horse. That horse got the idea that before they opened the gate, he was going to go ahead and get out. So he tried to jump over the gate and they pulled me off, and all of a sudden it hit me. You could die here. And so there was that moment of, do I really want to do this? It sure looked good on TV. And I remember one of the old cowboys, I don't know what he looked like because I was looking at the horse, but he said something to me along the lines of, you either need to do your business or get off the pot. And so he said it in a different way. But anyways, I decided I had come too far and my reputation was on the line. I had to go ahead and get back down in there. And so I did, and I really don't remember what happened. I just remember getting up off the ground like, how did I get here? But I'll tell you what, that feeling of being on the back of a wild animal, I felt alive. And I felt so alive that I was willing to risk death over and over again for that experience of life. Well, here's the thing. You may not be interested in wild horses, but if you're here today, you're probably interested in life. And I just want to tell you something, that as someone who has experienced life in the Lord, it is worth death. And if you are to experience it, you must first experience death. Another thing I was reminded of is my marriage. The life part, not the death part. You know, but in all seriousness, I was thinking back to when we were dating, like 25, 26 years ago, whatever. Before we were dating, my wife, who I had not dated, was telling her friends that she was going to marry me. And shortly after we started dating, it was in her mind that, I mean, we're going to get married, right? And so sometimes she would ask me that, you know, like, right, we're going to get married, right? I was like, yeah, sure, someday, down the road. Because here was the deal. The deal was, I really liked being with my now wife. I experienced so much life being with her, but I also knew this marriage thing meant a certain death. It meant the death of my choices and my rights. Of being able to do what I wanted to do so I had this tension and this struggle. It's like, I really like Nikki. I really like being with her, and I experienced so much life, but do I want to give all this up? Maybe. I mean, I don't want to give this up, but well, here's the thing. You can't have it both ways. You have got to make the choice. And maybe you're like so many people who follow Jesus. You've heard the promise of eternal life, and you're like, yes, I want some of that. And maybe you've gathered here together with a crowd, and you want some of that, but you've got to hear this. It doesn't matter if you're with a crowd of resurrected people, if you are not willing to choose death. And what I mean by that is, you are not willing to say goodbye to your rights and your choices and say, Lord, I'm yours. You decide what you do with me. You cannot have life eternally. And by the way, eternally means it starts now, okay? It just lasts eternally. You cannot have real life now, and you can't have it later. I don't say that as something cruel. I say that as something that is true. You must understand that. But hear this. It's worth it. I made the choice to die to myself, to marry Nikki. And it's been worth it. It's brought so much life. But hear this. It's also meant saying no to the things that I wanted to do. And saying yes to the things that God was saying for us. And it's the same with my walk with the Lord. He has called me and made choices for me I would not have chosen. But it's been good. It's been good, and out of it has come life that I couldn't have made on my own. Out of our marriage has come life. 4 of them. You've probably heard them a mile away. But it's good. And it's something that on my own I couldn't have. And you know what? Out of laying my life down and saying, Lord, I'm yours, He's brought life. Life that I cannot create. Hear this. God can not only give you life, but He will create life through you. But there is a requirement. You must lay your life down. I want to go to a scripture this morning that talks about that very thing. It's found in the Gospel of John in the 12th chapter. And in this chapter, you will find that there was a group of people that were following Jesus because they had heard about this life. Beginning in verse 17 of chapter 12, it says this. It says, many in the crowd had seen Jesus call Lazarus from the tomb, raising him from the dead, and they were telling others about it. That was the reason so many went out to meet him, because they had heard about this miraculous sign. So many people were following Jesus because of the miracles that were coming out of him. He had raised a dead man to life. And he had done that in order to draw people, because he wanted them to see the power that was within God and what He could give them. But again, let's go back to the basics. For Lazarus to experience what it was to be resurrected, he had to die. And he didn't choose that death. But in order for you to experience the resurrection of Jesus that He wants to give you, you must willingly choose death. But here's the thing. You've got to go through that moment where you're laying there and you're dead, and you have no more rights, no more choices, and at that moment you have to trust Jesus to give you life. And that's hard to do. It's hard to trust anyone else. Because we have all here, we've experienced some bad things in life. And we've learned you can't always trust people. Even people who claim to love you. And out of that, the enemy has spoken to you and said, you can't trust God. Because He's in control, right? So why would He allow this to happen to you? And we forget that we have an enemy. We forget that we make some of our own choices that go against the Lord. But the Lord has goodness in store for us. But that goodness we don't get to experience until we're willing to lay down in those moments, and we have no more choices, we have no more power, and if God doesn't come through, it's nothing. We can't have it unless we're willing to go through that. And so that's why the Lord had allowed so many people to see this miracle of raising Lazarus from the dead, because he wanted them to follow him. But after they followed him, Jesus had a message for them. And that message was, yes, you can experience this, but there's also a price to pay. There's also steps that you've got to take. And that's what Jesus will go on to share with the crowd that's gathered. I'm going to skip to verse 20 here. It says, some Greeks who had come to Jerusalem for the Passover celebration paid a visit to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee. They said, "Sir, we want to meet Jesus." Why? Because they've heard. They've heard this guy isn't just some dude rattling off theology. There's power in him. Philip told Andrew about it, and they went together to ask Jesus. Jesus replied, "Now the time has come for the Son of Man to enter into his glory. I tell you the truth, unless a kernel of wheat is planted in the soil and dies, it remains alone. But its death will produce many new kernels, a plentiful harvest of new lives." Now, I want to hold there for a moment. Whether you are an introvert or an extrovert, if you're an extrovert, you love being around people just all the time, and it just fills you. But if you're an introvert like me, you like your alone time, and you need it. But yet, none of us want to truly be alone. We crave authentic, deep relationship. But here's the whole thing about that authentic, deep relationship. Here's the whole thing about experiencing life. Yesterday, I was with my family. We were in a minivan. Of all the things I would choose to drive, a minivan. And if you see me out, I like to wear my cowboy hat, okay? And there I am in the minivan in my cowboy hat. I'm like, this probably looks really dumb. What are people thinking about me as they see this? Well, I've been trapped. Well, here's the thing. The thing is, though, is that it's worth it. It's worth it because I get to take drives to go see one of my kids play a game, and I get to do it with a whole group of people, and I get to do it with a whole community of people. And in that, there is a life. But in order to experience that life of my family and the community and the church, in order to experience all that, it means that I don't always get to do what I want to do. Sometimes I have to drive a minivan. Sometimes I have to eat at McDonald's. The list just goes on and on. But it's worth it. Why? Because I get to experience life. And the thing is, and what Jesus is pointing out here is this. If you are unwilling to lay yourself down and die to yourself, you know what's going to happen? You will remain alone. Who wants to be around a person who is always thinking about themselves and only does what they want to do? Does anybody really like me? Now, some of you like other people to make your decisions. You hate making decisions. And you know what? That's the way God created you. Because, if everybody liked making decisions, we'd have problems. But even so, you enjoy it when somebody makes a decision based on what they know you like. Why? Because you get what you want? Well, a little. But more so this. Because it means somebody loves you. Somebody cares about you enough to lay down their wants to serve you. That's what we want. But you know what? You're not going to have that as long as you're always living for yourself. And Jesus didn't just come down and throw that out at us and say, straighten yourselves out. He showed it to us. He laid down his life. He didn't do the things that he wanted. He laid down his life to show us this is how it's done. And what he's going to go on to say in this passage is this. If you want to serve me, you must follow me. And what that means is you must do as I do. Yes, we can't earn salvation. Jesus died for our salvation. It's a free gift, but here's the thing. If we don't walk in that pattern and die to ourselves as Jesus died to himself, we don't get to experience the gift either. Because you can't have resurrection without first having death. And so the crazy thing is this. The crazy thing is that so many of us fear being alone, but we actually choose to be alone when we push others away by always focusing on ourselves. That's the crazy thing about it. And so what Jesus says is this. If you choose to die to yourself and not focus on yourself, what will actually happen is you will bring about life and you will never be alone. He goes on. And he says, those who love their life in this world will lose it. Those who care nothing for their life in this world will keep it for eternity. Anyone who wants to serve me must follow me, because my servants must be where I am, and the Father will honor anyone who serves me. Now my soul is deeply troubled. Should I pray, Father, save me from this hour? But this is the very reason I came. Father, bring glory to your name. And one of the things Jesus shares in that last part there is that it's not an easy process. The fact that he chose death, it wasn't something that he's like, yes, I get to do this. It was a struggle in his heart. And so if you're struggling in your heart, know this. It's natural. But you've got to decide. We've all got that moment, whether you've ridden a wild horse or not. We've all got that moment where we're hanging up over the top and we're like, do I really want to do this? But if you're going to experience the life that God wants to give you, it means you must lay down your choices. If you have experienced people in your life that say that they have the hope of resurrection, and yet their life shows them constantly making their own choices without asking the Lord, constantly doing things that's all about them, it's a lie. They're just a part of the crowd that's been amazed by what they've heard and seen, and they want it, they just don't want to pay the price. What it means to follow the Lord, and when we get down to the knitting, what we're really talking about here is this. It means that I no longer make choices of who I marry. I ask the Lord, Lord, who do you want me to marry? I don't make choices of what job I take, what career I take. I say, Lord, what do you want me to do? Everything, where I live, I mean, all of it is, it's not about just showing up at a worship service. It's not about making a little statement, a little prayer and being baptized, going through some kind of ritual. It's about, if all of that is to have meaning, it's about me saying, Lord, you have my life from here on out. And the Lord's promise is, I will bring about life for you. Hear this. If you're in a place of frustration in your life, and you don't feel like there's life coming out of you, if you don't see others being blessed through you, it's probably because you haven't laid your life down. We've all had bosses in our life, okay? And maybe you've experienced both of these, maybe you've only experienced one of these. But there are two paths that someone who has authority can take. One path is, I have authority, you better do what I say or you're going to be in trouble. And I think we've all experienced that. Now, Do you want to lay down your life for that person? No. Now, you may do some things that they say because you fear what they can do, but you don't want to lay down your life for that person. But that's not who God is, and that's not who He's called us to be. What Jesus made clear in His Word is that those He gives authority, His intention for them is to do exactly what He did, which is this: to go before those you lead and lay your life down for them, to serve them, to equip them to do what you have called them to do. That's who God is. And if you've ever experienced someone in authority like that, you know what? You want to lay your life down for them. Because you see them doing it all the time. And that's what God's called us to do. And when that happens, if you take that path, because all of us have a certain amount of authority. All of us have an ability to impact others' lives. All of us are in some kind of leadership position. I don't care if you're 5 years old. Somewhere you have that, okay? And you have a choice to make. And if you choose to try and get people to do what you want out of fear, there will be no life in that. They will resent you. They will not want to serve you. But if you choose to lay your life down for them, what you will find is that life gets produced out of it. Life gets produced. Because what they want to do is they decide, I want to follow that. And then they begin to follow that pattern, and somebody else says, I want to follow that. And that's exactly what happened with Jesus. He laid down His life. He took 12 men, and those 12, 11, said, I'm going to follow that pattern. And out of that, others said, I'm going to follow that pattern. But in the mix of it all, there's always a crowd that says, yeah, I want the resurrection, but I don't want to lay it down. And out of that, there's death and there's no life. But each of us have a choice. I've experienced both sides of that coin. I've experienced the death, but I still have a choice. What am I going to do? Am I going to lay down my life? If I do, I will see life out of it. So the question is this: what are you going to do with that? Are you laying your life down? And whether we've laid our life down for the Lord or not, there's always places that we still haven't fully surrendered. So here's the thing: the Lord He wants you to experience more life than what you're experiencing right now. He wants you to experience, even though we're not face to face with the Lord and there's so much we haven't experienced, there are things He wants you to experience right now. But it means trusting Him. Are you going to keep fighting for your rights in this life? Are you going to keep fighting for what you can get, the American dream, whatever it is? If so, you will remain alone. But if you lay it down and say, Lord, it's all yours, you will experience life. I pray that you will trust Him. Lord, thank you that you are a good, good Father. And that, Lord, you have laid your life down for us. You've shown us the pattern. And I just pray for trust. And Lord, it's a daily, moment-by-moment trust where we continually choose to lay our lives down and not fight for what we want, but just to trust you to provide. Lord, I pray that for every one of us. And I pray that, Lord, if there's one here who's never said, I'm just going to lay it down and I'm going to trust Him, Lord, I pray that in faith they would take that step today. And for those of us who have, Lord, I pray, Lord, for those areas where we're not wanting to lay it down, give us the faith to do it, Lord. Call us to you today. Lord, we love you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. If you would stand, please. We're going to end our time in worship.